Well, Laolu Akande joins us now, as we did say he was going to, and he's a former presidential aide and also the presenter of Channels Television's Inside Sources. It's good to see you, Mr. Akande.
Good morning. Always good to see you guys.
What have you been discovering in recent times? Because we have been looking at this arrangement for political parties to determine their candidates to, run in the primaries or to, come up in the primaries. And it does appear that this is already raising a lot of dust. We've spoken with somebody representing the candidates, a candidate from, or will I say, an aspirant from Ogun State. Yes, from Ogun State, running for Ogun East Senatorial District. And we can see that there is already trouble. And if we were to go with that, even though, yes, there have been a few successful, and even then we can't even take it for granted. For instance, in Lagos State, where we have seen the deputy governor emerge. But even then, we have seen people who are still saying, no, we want to still see primaries. We'll see how that eventually goes. But this is what we're looking at. Do you think that it was really, really wise? What do you think they were thinking when they decided to scrap this option of indirect primaries?
Okay, well, so it's always a very exciting thing when you see the Nigerian political elite jostling for power. You will have wished that when it concerns the welfare of the people, you will find this kind of fight.
The kind of energy.
Yeah, exactly. You know, but unfortunately, you don't see that, the kind of energy that we have seen. But if you look at it, the idea of indirect primaries, which is the delegates, seem to have become something that is just, essentially commercialized. That's the argument, not that I think they should have removed it entirely. In my view, they should have left it to the parties to always decide which one they want to take. But I guess, the opinion of the National Assembly and the president is that, look, just take away that part, and lately you see this push towards consensus. The problem with consensus essentially is that if you want to follow the dictates of the law, every other aspirant, who has purchased a form and expressed interest in the race must sign off to say that, look, I'm not, I have stepped down in support of, so I don't know how much, that is possible. For instance, in a place like Oyo State now, where there was a move to push somebody, I think Mr. Sharafa Ali to be governor, a move supported by the Olubadan himself, and then there were all kinds of exposure about what happened.
And you also have the president's minister resigning,
yeah, exactly.
Even though he resigned after the deadline,
exactly.
And he's still throwing his hat into the...
Exactly.
Even I would say that shouldn't he be penalized for that? Because the president did give a directive, didn't he?
Well, so it's an administrative directive, so it's up to the president, to deal with it. He didn't really break the law, as it were, but he broke the regulation of the president. But I guess the president was not very keen on it. You know that even in his own case, Adelabu he had said that he wasn't going to leave. There was a statement that said he resigned, and then said he didn't resign, and then a couple weeks again, he resigned. So the point is that this consensus thing is not, for the most part, of the ones that we are seeing in the media. It's not really going very smoothly, and it's exposing the underbelly of the political elite. Look at what is happening in Ogun State, for instance. Now, so you have the distinguished Senator Benga Daniel trying to go for the jugular of His Excellency Governor Abiodun, but Benga Daniel, if you have a reverse, will do exactly what Mr. Abiodun is doing now, and this is how this guy cut the deal. What most people don't know about Ogun State is that Benga Daniel, Amosun, and Abiodun, the three of them were actually friends. And they had all planned, to run for office one after the other. But guess what? At every point, when it was supposed to go to the next person, it always ended up in a fight. And that is what you are still seeing, in that state and in several other states of the country. I don't see how, Mr. Benga Daniel will imagine that he will be able to overpower the incumbent governor. Because if he were to be in charge, he will ensure that his own dictates is what prevails. So this idea of consensus is a bit testy. And I'm not sure that it is essentially good for for internal party democracy. I think there has to be a way to have a competitive primaries. I think that will help our democracy more than all of this confusion that we are seeing with consensus.
Let's talk a bit about security, because I wanted to get your thoughts on the hiring of the president, because it's a lot of conversations going on. I want to get his name. Retired Major General Adeyinka Famadewa, appointed as the special advisor to the president on Homeland Security.
Yeah.
Now, what's happened is while we're celebrating, oh, it's nice to have someone who's helping us with Homeland Security.
Right.
Of course, everyone's thinking, wait, hold on, don't we have a national security advisor? What's this about? What is this office? What does it do? Is it competing with the office of the NSA? Is it complementing it? Is it under the NSA? Just so you can give us some of your thoughts on this particular.
And then there's also a Ministry of Interior.
And there's Ministry of Interior, and then there's Ministry of Defense. We have all of these things going on at the same time. Yeah. What's going on?
Well, I think you have a point that if this is not properly explained, it might actually suggest a bit of confusion. Yeah. If you don't have clarity. But I think that we should give the president the kudos for trying to just keep at it on this issue of security. Because clearly, the National Security Advisor, if you look at his role, I don't think, or put differently, the challenges before the country seems to have exceeded, what his capacity by himself could deliver clearly, and this is my own personal view. So the idea of trying to carve out, that aspect of internal security and bring somebody who is now called Homeland Security is to enable the president have somebody coordinate all the agencies and the people that are responsible for internal security. That's why it's called Homeland Security. And by the way, retired General Famadewa is one of the best people that you can find to be able to get the job done. He was with Major General Monguno when we were in the villa. He was the chief of staff of the NSA there and did an excellent job in terms of being diligent and understanding the issues. So I think it's a good thing to bring somebody like that onto the table. And I don't think it's going to be under the NSA. But I think what the president ought to do is to ensure that all of these people work together, including with the service chiefs, the IGP, and the other force, is to ensure that there is cohesion. We need more hands such as Famadewa to help.
But properly organized, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Because that's what the question is.
Yeah.
Is there some kind of coordination? How does this work? Who answers to who? These things are very important. Is there a reason why the presidency hasn't really broken this down, or do you think they would break it down in a few days' time or something?
Well, if you look at the title, so the National Security Advisor is a National Security Advisor. It's also an advisor. And this Homeland Security is also an advisor. Yes. So I imagine that they are part. But to the extent that the NST still has quite a bit of more institutional roles and expectation, I will still imagine that the NSA is still going to be more involved at a higher level, and this is just my own speculation.
Your speculation, because this is very important. Let's not forget, the former NSA, Monguno, whom you mentioned, was a general.
Yes.
He retired, and you know that there has always been that rift between the
army and the police.
Military and the police. The current NSA, was from the police force.
Yeah.
I don't know how that is, especially if they are par. Don't you think that there could be some trickiness to handling all of this?
Yeah, well, so that's why I said that it will appear that the role that General Famadewa is going to be playing is going to be more in the area of internal security. Internal security. Which means that the president will have relieved the National Security Advisor of some specific rules. And I mean, if that doesn't happen, then it's going to be a complete mess.
I don't want to flog the matter, but what the Minister of Interior? We have a Minister of Interior.
So the Minister of Interior has specific agencies that's under him. But you still need somebody close to the president who can help the president coordinate it. I think the role of Famadewa ought to be to help the president coordinate. And this is one of the things that we've said, that there is poor coordination in the president's office. So hopefully Famadewa can help to tie up some of those loose ends.
Well, what we want to see at the end of the day is to make sure that our country is safe, and whatever the president needs to do to make sure that Nigerians live in safety and security of their lives. I imagine that a lot of people will want him to do just that. And I also imagine that you're keeping an eye on the other political parties. Yes, they also have to contend with this issue. We've spoken about the arrangement as regards the ruling party, but looking at the other parties as well, we've seen Mr. Peter Obi defect to the NDC and Mr. Kwankwanso as well. We're seeing right now, I think someone was saying that there's peace in our party now. the spokesperson of the ADC, saying since they left, there's been some settlement, so to speak. I don't know. When you look at the preparations of the opposition political parties as well, do you really think that we'll be set up for a real contest come 2027?
Okay, so I think a very interesting scenario might be evolving if you look at it very closely, because now you have Obi and Kwankwanso clearly going to get a ticket in NDC. And so in ADC is now up to Amechi versus Atiku. And then, of course, APC, you have the president. And then President Goodluck Jonathan is beginning to give hints that he might also throw his hat in the ring. So there is a potential for us to have what we had in 1979, 1983, like have 4 or 5 very solid presidential candidates. Now, if I were the president, I would be troubled about that. Because if you have a Jonathan in the race and you have an Obi in the race and then the president himself in the race, all of them from the South, you could have just bifurcated the South. Somebody takes Southwest, somebody takes South-South, somebody takes Southeast. That now increases the leverage of the North. So it is very, very interesting what is emerging, and we have to watch it very, very closely, because if indeed the ruling party and their friends were trying not to have a contest, we might be heading. And of course, this is still in the realm of speculation, but it seems we are heading for a real battle royale if you have an Atiku or Amechi, and then an Obi, and then a Jonathan, and then a Tinubu. I think it might really be, a very, very interesting game that is ahead. So it's looking very, very interesting. And it's just emerging, and I am quite excited.
I can see it already in your voice. I'm sure a lot of people are watching very closely, because before now, people had said, well, what is going to be this election? It doesn't look like it's going to happen. But from what we're seeing now, it appears that the tide is gradually changing. And I think all eyes will be on INEC, to make sure that they are also getting their own acts together for a credible and fair contest that Nigerians can, go home and be happy with. That's on the one hand. And also to political parties, especially as their primaries have to happen at the end of this month. We'll wait and see how the candidates eventually emerge. We have to thank you for speaking with us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Mr. Laolu Akande is a former presidential aide and also the presenter of Channels Television's Inside Sources.